Welcome. This will be my review, spoiler-free review, not that there's much to spoil here, of the 1993 video game Columns 3, Revenge of the Columns, which is a truly wonderful title. So I am gonna, let's see, I should start by saying that so this was originally for the Sega Mega Drive / Genesis, a console. I played it on PC through Steam via the sadly now delisted. Hopefully, if I make enough of these videos, eventually there will be enough interest that it will be put back on the market. Anyway, the game that has this and like 50 other games is called Sega Mega Drive Genesis. Holy crap. Okay, one second. I'll get the exact classics. That's it. Sega Mega Drive and Genesis Classics is that video game title. And yeah, absolutely love this one. So I am I already did a review of the first columns. What happened to columns 2? We don't talk about columns 2 on this channel because I don't currently have access to it and I've never played it. But a lot of what's in here was also there. So I am not going to restate anything in this video that I said here. I'm going to try not to, at least. So basically, the big new thing here is that when you're playing the single player mode, you're now playing against someone, a computer controlled opponent. Basically, there's a storyline now, and I mean, it's one of those things. I think I may have even said in my video on Columns 1, I don't know how because I knew that there was a Columns, that I also had a Columns 3 in the aforementioned, Steam title. How do you make a sequel to something like that? Like, with Tetris, it's fairly obvious. Stick in just at least one new piece, slap a number on it, there you go. But with this, like, it's difficult to see how the gameplay, how what part of the game could you change to make it a sequel? Yeah, storyline and having you play against computer opponents might be the one thing that you could really do. In addition to one other thing that I will get to. Basically, there's a legend or myth or something about there being a great treasure inside a pyramid, but all who have entered have, I guess, disappeared or something. They never returned from the pyramid, and now you are about to enter it. And I will say that is, I mean, the whole thing with, gemstones, which is what these games, you're constantly interacting with gemstones. Okay, a pyramid makes a certain amount of sense. I probably don't even have to tell you, no, they're not particularly sensitive to the culture. They do kind of treat it as a costume, just something to have fun with and then put down at the end of the day. So I'm not going to make any excuses for that. They basically try to figure out, so you're inside this pyramid, and you're playing against various, living things. One of them is a spider, for example, that, hypothetically, maybe you could find inside a pyramid. Some of them are a little bit of a stretch. Some of them are a lot of bit of stretch. And it definitely does, playing the main mode here was very different from the first one. In the first one, like hypothetically, if you had fast enough reflexes and or abused rewind and save states, you could essentially keep one run going for forever. This, it's more, it's not necessarily very many minutes before either you or your opponent loses. And, the opponents, it's best 2 out of 3. So you do have to, defeat them twice. But it also means that if you get defeated once and you don't feel like rewinding or using a save state, I know, originally they didn't have that when you play this on console. Yeah, you still have another chance at defeating them. You don't have to play very aggressively from right away. And maybe even strategy, at like some of the first matches, you can basically just play as if there wasn't an opponent. But, that's more or less just to get you used to the idea, yeah, there is an opponent. And I really like the fact that they play very differently. I didn't realize that there were that many different ways to play columns. But that's obviously part of the appeal of playing, PvE. You want different enemies to behave in different ways. I guess it is sort of a boss rush, isn't it? But let's see. I think, does that pretty much bring us to... So right now I'm actually struggling to remember if the first one had PvP. I remember that it had like a co-op mode. It's possible it also had... No, yeah. I think it might have had PvE. Anyway, whether or not it did. I definitely didn't play the PvP, so I don't know if the slam ability was in that one as well, but basically you can slam your enemy, which means to raise not the roof but the bottom of their screen, which of course can like very quickly lead to losing. And I love the fact that if I'm not certain if it was like if there was a specific amount of time you had to do it, but if the enemy slams you and you slam right after, certainly it's possible it would also happen if you slammed later. Not only do you slam them, but you actually unslam yourself. So, and it's not something that you can do just anytime. I'm not entirely sure what it is that determines whether or not you can, but, obviously if you could do it anytime, then, at some point you just start constantly slamming each other and doing absolutely nothing else. So they do have to put some cap on that, no? And yeah, I distinctly remember, and it wasn't that long ago anyway, but I remember what it was like to play the single-player mode of Columns 1, and this is just completely different. Like it doesn't lose the essence. Like it was always, you always had to be to think and move fast. But it's a whole other thing here, and yeah, they do a really solid job on that. And I appreciated that it's one of those games where before you start playing against an enemy, they will like there's gonna be like this little speech bubble, I think it's called. Wow, it's been so long since I read comics. And they'll say something, and they have different personalities. And I think that might pretty much, but yeah, I really appreciate it. Like, there were times where, as best I could tell, the reason I lost a match was because the enemy reached a certain number of points before I did. It wasn't that either of us, he didn't win because I slammed hit the top. And then, other times, yeah, it was, one of us won because the other hit the top, maybe even because we slammed at the exact right moment. And let's see, I think that pretty much, so yeah, there's a couple of items in this one. One that pushes your slam bar all the way down, and let's see if I believe one of the am I remembering that right? Never mind. There's right, another thing about slamming. When you slam your opponent, they will lose whatever gems they were moving on the screen. And considering there is still that one gem that just dissolves like a ridiculous amount of your gems, yeah, that's another aspect where the timing is, yeah. Right, and to be clear, this does still have PvP, and I figure you can also slam there. Now, so at the end of when you win the second time against an opponent, when you won the best 2 out of 3, you will find a treasure chest which will have an item. And I'm not sure I can accurately describe all of the items, but let's see, if I understand correctly, one of them one of them gives you a full do-over. If you lost 2 matches against one, you can, use that to. I think it's hourglass. You flip over an hourglass, which obviously, either if you don't want to use rewind and save states, or back when this wasn't emulated, is obviously a big deal. Let's see, you have one that summons that special gem that I was I'm fairly confident I described in my video on the first game, and if not, I did just describe briefly what it does. Let's see, then there's the right, yes, the one I definitely want to mention. There's one that allows you to clear every gem you have on screen. And the fact that using that doesn't guarantee you win against some of the tougher opponents was something I really appreciated. Because I'm not gonna lie, I thought it was, that's a, that's like the win button. I discovered it. And I also really appreciated the, once it's one of those where, in video games, when there's like items or that sort of thing, I can be a little bit of a hoarder. I'll admit that. And this is one of those games that doesn't try to force, it's not like there's something about, once you've had an item for X amount of rounds against enemies, it will, you have to use, I'm pretty sure it doesn't. I'm fairly confident I didn't lose any by not using them for a very long time. And yeah, I think that might pretty much cover the whole thing. Yeah. So I feel like, is there one more thing that I really wanted to make sure to say? Let's see. Was it? Hmm. But yeah, I believe that is everything. So yeah, um, I rate this 8. What's it called? Introductions of new, elements to a game and a sequel to make sure that it is, feels really like a huge upgrade from the previous incarnation, as sequel should. Right, and I suppose I should say, I have no idea if like a bunch of what I've described here was also in the second game. In a sequel with a fantastic title, out of 10.